Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about This Is What America Looks Like, My Journey from Refugee to Congresswoman by Ilhan Omar. This book covers her story. She is the last child of her family. She grew up in a middle-class Somali background with access to drivers in a comfortable neighborhood. What broke out, before going there, she grew up in a home in which everybody had a voice regardless of their gender, regardless of their age. Every decision was made as a unit sometimes, and as a result many decisions took a long time to be made. War broke out and they were forced to seek refuge in Kenya. In Kenya, they were given the opportunity to move to the United States and Minnesota. She describes the whole process, and one of the things that stands out is that they were made to watch an American This Is What America Looks Like kind of movie, and they left Kenya with the expectation that they were going to be given certain things, that there were certain things that were going to be easily accessible to them. And of course, that is not really the case. So they moved she moved from Kenya to Minnesota, and that transition wasn't an easy one for her. She found herself getting into fights a lot of time. There was that cultural mismatch that was going on. She didn't understand the culture, she didn't understand the language, so she had to learn the language and she had to learn the culture, and the process got involved in her community, and started gaining knowledge about how somehow the political system works in the United States. She gets married several times. She describes what happens or what leads to her marriages, why they lasted, why they failed. She doesn't give us much details about her second and third marriage, which I thought was very interesting because those were the most controversial, with the third being the most controversial one to date. Then she talks about her ride into politics and what she had to deal with, being a woman, a skinny woman with a foreign sounding name, wearing a hijab, and a practicing Muslim. And she's seeking to be a congresswoman, and it wasn't an easy work because she had to fight against the fear of the foreigner idea, of the fear of women idea. She had to fight against the fear of Muslims too idea, and she still made it. She became a congresswoman. She talks about how she had to garner interest from the Somali community, how it was a battle, and how oftentimes her dad had to fight for her, had to speak up for her. It's an interesting read, and it's a book that I recommend. There's so many salient points that many people will take. The intended audience for this book are probably newcomers to the United States, refugees, and probably people that seek to understand these newcomers. And it's supposed to be a book that encourages these newcomers that one day, if you put your nose to the grindstone, you can be a person of power in this country, and another message that she put across too was actually on the power to vote, because a lot of people get so busy with their grind that they don't get involved in the political process of their neighborhood, their community, or where they are. And so decisions are being made that affects them, and they have no way of saying, no, I don't want this decision to be made. And she made it clear that the way to affect change is to actually use the power you've been given, which is the power to vote. So once you're given the opportunity to now vote, find out what those issues are and go and vote, because you don't want to be complaining for how many years, when you could have said, gotten people together to say a solid no to whatever that referendum was. So it's a good book. I recommend it. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. My reasons might not make sense to many people, but it is what it is. The reasons are, first, some parts of her story didn't read like her story. To me, it read like pieces of several people's stories that were pieced together and presented as hers, number one. The second thing is, I would have liked her to go into details about the personal, like what was the story with the second marriage? What was the background story of the third marriage in particular? Because there's a lot you can find out there on the internet. When did they meet? How did that lead to the marriage? Why? Those things. I'm always about, I want to know what the personal is. And then the another reason is that one of the things that people don't talk about, you know, and it's something I always get to people, is you have to understand your privilege. And yes, she came as a refugee to the United States, but when she was in Somalia, she was from a middle-class background. And there's an attitude that you have if you're from a rich background in whatever country, or a middle-class background in whatever country. And that attitude is what you take into whatever you go into, because you're not easily scared, you know, and that is a privilege, you know. And so, you know, though I admire what she has accomplished, you know, I probably would have admired her more if she was someone that came from maybe a background in which there was a little bit more of, you know, like a little bit more of a struggle, you know. Yeah. So, but the book is great, you know, read it. And I would like to hear what your thoughts are. Till next time, take care and ciao.